Well, to discuss what is happening in Sweden in more detail, I'm very pleased now to be joined on the line by Peo Hansen. He's a professor of political science at Linköping University. Thank you for your time today, Professor. And what was your initial reaction to those images of violence yesterday? I understand at least some of it took place in the city where you're based.
Yes, they did here in Norrköping. Yeah, well, I think one of the main problems here concerns the police decision to grant permission to all of these demonstrations and Koran burning, because the police were obviously unable to secure safety and to really guarantee security around the event. And that is a perfectly valid reason for the police to not grant a permission to stage these manifestations. So I think that's where the one of the basic faults lie, and I think then all of what we're seeing now could have been avoided.
The police allow this to go ahead? Is it a question of the importance of preserving freedom of speech in Sweden?
Yeah, they cite that, of course, and there's a big problem too, because there are really two laws, legal frameworks clashing here. One saying freedom of speech, the other one saying that you cannot incite racial hatred or ethnic hatred or any kind of hatred and really enticing to violence against a religious group. That is, you cannot do that. So I think here is a huge problem within the Swedish law, that society cannot guarantee the safety of certain groups. In this case, Swedish Muslims, who and I think that's very essential to underline that Paludan was granted permission in precisely areas where you have a lot of Swedes who are Muslims, where they live.
And let's talk about this individual. You just mentioned him there, Ramzan Paludan. He is the individual who is encouraging a lot of these Koran burnings. Tell us a bit about who he is and what kind of influence he wields in Sweden.
Well, I think he's part of a pattern. We shouldn't focus too much on him as an individual, I think. It's part of a pattern of a sort of lucrative business that a lot of hate groups have found, and that is to incite hatred against Muslims in particular, but also other groups. And he then, as your report showed, is trying now to have a political campaign and be elected in Sweden, again on a ticket purely sort of based on racial and religious hatred towards Muslims.
What do you think needs to be done to improve community relations in Sweden?
First of all, we need to have a serious discussion about the sort of clashing legal frameworks, because I don't think if I were to seek permission, if let's say I build a little wooden replica of a synagogue and I ask for permission to burn that synagogue, that wooden replica, in a Jewish community or outside a synagogue, I hope I'm not granted permission to hold such a manifestation. And these things we need to discuss so that we don't get these situations. But on the other hand, whenever there are controversial demonstrations, the police should perform, and they have just shown themselves to be highly incompetent, and they had several days to plan, and they saw where things were headed, and yet they continued to grant continued permissions for the burning of the Quran.
Professor Peo Hansen, thanks very much indeed for your time today on France 24.
Thank you. Thanks to you.